Ethan Caldwell was a man who had it all. At 38, he wasn't just rich. He was ridiculously rich. His empire stretched across luxury hotels, tech startups, and prime real estate in cities around the world. People admired him from afar, whispering about his sharp suits, fancy cars, and the private jet that took him wherever he wanted to go. But behind all the glamour, Ethan had grown restless. Life felt predictable. He'd conquered every challenge thrown at him, and now success seemed almost too easy. One evening, Ethan met up with his childhood friend Jake for dinner at an upscale restaurant in Manhattan. The place was buzzing with chatter, clinking glasses and the soft hum of jazz music playing in the background. As they dug into their steaks, Jake leaned back in his chair, swirling his wine glass thoughtfully. "You know," Jake said with a smirk, "you're untouchable these days. You've got everything money can buy, but I bet you couldn't survive without it." Ethan raised an eyebrow, intrigued. "What are you talking about?" Jake grinned. "I'm saying, you wouldn't last 2 weeks working a normal job, living like everyone else does. No chauffeurs, no assistants, no access to your billions. Just plain old hard work." Ethan chuckled, shaking his head. "You think I can't handle it? Please. I built my empire from scratch. I didn't start out with silver spoons or trust funds." Jake leaned forward, his eyes gleaming mischievously. "Prove it then. Spend 2 weeks as a waiter in some small-town diner. If you pull it off, I'll donate $5 million to charity. But if you quit early, you have to give up your entire year's salary to my charities." For a moment, Ethan hesitated. Waiter? In a diner? It sounded ridiculous. But then again, Jake's words stung. Was he really so disconnected from normal life? Pride kicked in, and before he knew it, Ethan nodded. "Deal." The next morning, Ethan woke up feeling uneasy but determined. He packed a bag with casual clothes, a far cry from his usual wardrobe, and headed to the airport. Jake had arranged everything. A tiny town called Maplewood, population barely over 5,000, and a job waiting for him at Rosie's Diner. When Maisonneuve, Ethan arrived, he stood outside the little eatery staring at its faded sign. This was going to be harder than he thought. Inside, the scene was chaotic. The air smelled of frying bacon and fresh coffee. Plates clattered, customers laughed, and waitstaff darted between tables like bees in a hive. Ethan felt completely out of place. His expensive watch and neatly styled hair made him stick out like a sore thumb among the laid-back staff. "Hey, you must be the new guy," said a voice behind him. Ethan turned to see a young woman wearing a bright smile and a slightly wrinkled uniform shirt. She introduced herself as Mia, one of the diner's most experienced waitresses. "Don't worry," she added with a wink. "We'll get you up to speed." But getting up to speed proved harder than Ethan imagined. On his first day, he tripped over his own feet while carrying a tray of drinks, spilling orange juice all over a customer's lap. Mortified, he apologized profusely, but the man just laughed it off. Later, he accidentally called another regular sir instead of using her preferred name, which earned him a playful scolding. By lunchtime, Ethan was exhausted and frustrated. How did people do this every day? Mia noticed his struggle and stepped in to help. She showed him how to balance trays properly, memorize orders efficiently, and even crack jokes with customers to lighten the mood. Despite his initial awkwardness, Ethan found himself drawn to her kindness and patience. There was something refreshing about Mia. She didn't treat him like the billionaire he was. She treated him like anyone else trying to learn the ropes. As the days went by, Ethan slowly improved. He started recognizing faces. The elderly man who always ordered scrambled eggs. The teenager saving up for college by washing dishes after school. Each interaction taught him something new about resilience, gratitude, and community. And through it all, Mia remained his guiding light, cheering him on when things got tough and reminding him why this experience mattered. By the end of the first week, Ethan realized something surprising. He wasn't dreading coming to work anymore. Sure, it was exhausting, and yes, he still made mistakes. But there was a strange satisfaction in earning his keep, in doing something that didn't involve boardrooms or billion-dollar deals. For the first time in years, Ethan felt grounded. And as he watched Mia move effortlessly through the diner, helping customers and coworkers alike, he couldn't help but wonder what secrets lay beneath her cheerful exterior. Little did he know, those secrets would soon change his life forever. Ethan's second week at the diner started off much better than the first. He'd finally gotten the hang of balancing trays without spilling coffee everywhere, and he could even remember a few regulars' names. The customers were starting to warm up to him too. They didn't care that he was some big-shot billionaire from the city. They just saw a guy trying his best, and that made them smile. Mia noticed the change in Ethan almost immediately. He wasn't as stiff or distant as he'd been during those first awkward days. Instead, he seemed more relaxed, like he was actually enjoying himself. One morning, as they both stood behind the counter waiting for the breakfast rush, Mia decided to ask him about it. "So," she said, leaning casually against the counter, "how's the famous billionaire life treating you now?" Ethan chuckled, shaking his head. "Honestly, I don't think I've ever worked this hard in my life, but I kind of like it." Mia raised an eyebrow, surprised by his answer. "Really? You're not just saying that because you lost a bet, are you?" "No, I mean it," Ethan replied, his tone sincere. "This place, it's different. Everyone here is so real. Back home, people treat me like I'm some untouchable figurehead. Here, I'm just another person trying to keep plates full and customers happy." Mia smiled softly, appreciating his honesty. She had always admired people who could admit when they were wrong, or when they needed to grow. And Ethan, despite his wealth and status, was proving to be one of those people. As the days went on, Ethan began to notice things about Mia that he hadn't picked up on before. For instance, she never complained, no matter how busy or stressful things got. Even when orders piled up and the kitchen ran out of pancakes during the Saturday morning rush, Mia stayed calm, cracking jokes with customers to ease their frustration. One afternoon, Ethan watched as Mia quietly slipped a $20 bill into the pocket of a young mother struggling to pay her bill. The woman looked overwhelmed, juggling two restless kids while counting out crumpled singles. Without hesitation, Mia stepped in, telling her not to worry about it. Later, when Ethan asked her why she did it, Mia shrugged. "She's got enough on her plate," Mia said simply. "Sometimes people need more than food. They need hope." Those words stuck with Ethan long after their shift ended. Hope. It wasn't something he thought about much in his day-to-day life. Sure, he donated to charities and funded scholarships, but it was always from a distance. He wrote checks and attended galas, but he rarely saw the direct impact of his actions. Here, though, hope was tangible. It lived in the way Mia smiled at weary travelers passing through town, in the way she remembered little details about the regulars' lives, and in the way she gave selflessly, even when she didn't have much to give. Despite her generosity, Mia carried her own burdens. Over time, Ethan learned bits and pieces of her story. Her father had passed away when she was young, leaving her family in debt. To make ends meet, Mia took on odd jobs throughout high school and college, working tirelessly to support her mom and younger brother. Now, years later, she was still putting others first, even as she pursued her dream of becoming a social worker. Ethan couldn't help but feel a pang of guilt whenever he thought about Mia's sacrifices. Here he was, someone who had everything handed to him on a silver platter, yet he often felt empty inside. Meanwhile, Mia, who had faced hardships most people couldn't imagine, radiated warmth and positivity. She reminded him of what truly mattered, not money or power, but connection, kindness, and purpose. Their bond deepened over shared moments during late-night shifts. Sometimes, after the last customer left and the diner grew quiet, they'd sit together at one of the booths talking about their lives. Ethan found himself opening up in ways he never had before. He told Mia about the loneliness that came with success, about feeling like he was constantly performing for an audience that only cared about his net worth. In return, Mia shared stories about her dreams for the future, how she wanted to help families in crisis, how she hoped to open a community center someday where kids could learn and grow in a safe environment. It wasn't just their conversations that brought them closer. It was the small everyday gestures too, like the time Ethan accidentally dropped a stack of dirty dishes shattering them across the floor. Before he could panic, Mia handed him a broom with a reassuring smile, saying, "Don't sweat it. Happens to the best of us." Or the time she brought him a thermos of hot cocoa on a particularly cold morning, knowing he wasn't used to the Midwest winters. By the middle of the second week, Ethan realized something profound. He wasn't just learning how to be a waiter. He was learning how to be human again. For years, he'd been so focused on climbing the ladder of success that he'd forgotten what it meant to connect with others on a deeper level. At Rosie's Diner, surrounded by people who didn't care about his bank account, Ethan rediscovered the joy of simplicity, the kind of joy that came from serving others, sharing laughter, and finding beauty in the ordinary. But just as Ethan began to settle into this new rhythm, a storm hit Maplewood, one that would test not only his resolve but also the strength of the community he'd come to admire. Little did he know, the challenges ahead would force him to confront his privilege in ways he never anticipated, and ultimately lead to a decision that would change his life forever. By the end of Ethan's second week at Rosie's Diner, he had started to feel like part of the team. The customers knew his face, the staff trusted him enough to let him handle busy shifts, and even Mia teased him less about being a city slicker. It was almost hard to believe that just 2 weeks earlier, Ethan had walked into the diner completely out of his element. Now, he found himself looking forward to the early mornings, the smell of fresh coffee brewing, and the lively chatter that filled the space. But life has a way of throwing curveballs when you least expect them. One morning, as Ethan tied on his apron and prepared for another day, Rosie, the diner's owner, called everyone into the kitchen. Her usually cheerful demeanor was replaced with a somber expression, and her hands trembled slightly as she held a piece of paper. "I've got some bad news," Rosie began, her voice heavy with emotion. "I've been battling health issues for a while now, and my doctor says I need to focus on treatment full-time. That means I have to sell the diner." The room fell silent. For a moment, no one moved or spoke. Then slowly murmurs broke out among the staff. Ethan could see the shock and sadness etched on their faces. This wasn't just a job for them, it was a second home. The diner had been the backbone of Maplewood for decades, a place where families gathered, friendships formed, and memories were made. Mia stood frozen, clutching the edge of the counter. Ethan noticed tears welling up in her eyes. He didn't need to ask why. It was clear how much this place meant to her. She'd poured years of her life into Rosie's Diner, working long hours and giving everything she had to keep it running smoothly. Losing it would be devastating, not just for her but for the entire town. As the staff dispersed, trying to process the news, Mia stayed behind. Ethan approached her cautiously, unsure of what to say. Finally, he settled on something simple. "Hey, are you okay?" Mia shook her head, wiping away a tear. "It's not fair," she said softly. "This diner is more than just a building. It's where people come together, where they feel safe. If it closes, what happens to all of us?" Ethan nodded, understanding exactly what she meant. Over the past 2 weeks, he'd seen firsthand how important this place was to the community. It wasn't just about serving food. It was about creating connections. Whether it was Mr. Thompson reminiscing about his late wife over eggs or Lily bringing her son in for a rare treat, the diner was a lifeline for so many people. Determined to help, Mia decided to take action. She rallied the staff and locals to save the diner. Flyers went up around town advertising fundraisers, bake sales, and benefit nights. Volunteers pitched in wherever they could, baking pies, organizing events, spreading the word on social media. Even some of the regulars offered to donate what little they could spare. Everyone wanted to do their part to keep the diner alive. Ethan watched as Mia threw herself into the effort, working tirelessly day and night. Her energy was infectious, inspiring others to join in. But despite their best efforts, the numbers weren't adding up. Corporate developers had already swooped in, eager to buy the property and turn it into yet another cookie-cutter parking lot. No matter how hard they tried, it seemed impossible to match the offer. One evening, after another long day of brainstorming ideas that led nowhere, Mia collapsed onto a stool in the corner of the diner. Ethan sat down beside her, handing her a cup of tea. Neither of them spoke for a while, the weight of the situation hanging heavily between them. Finally, Ethan broke the silence. "There's got to be a way to save this place," he said. "We can't give up." Mia sighed, staring into her tea. "I don't know what else we can do. We're doing everything we can, but it's just not enough." Ethan hesitated, wrestling with a decision he'd been avoiding since the beginning. He knew he had the power to step in, to use his wealth to buy the property and protect the diner from demolition. But doing so would mean revealing his true identity. Would people see him as a hero, or as someone who thought throwing money at problems was the answer? Worse still, would they resent him for hiding the truth? As if sensing his internal struggle, Mia turned to him. "You've been amazing through all of this," she said. "Not just with the fundraiser, but with everything. You've worked harder than anyone expected. Whatever happens, I'm glad you're here." Her words struck a chord deep within Ethan. This wasn't about pride or ego anymore. It was about doing the right thing. The diner had changed him in ways he never imagined, teaching him lessons about humility, connection, and purpose. If he walked away now knowing he had the means to make a difference, would he ever forgive himself? That night, Ethan lay awake in his small rented apartment staring at the ceiling. Memories of the past 2 weeks flooded his mind. The laughter, the struggles, the sense of belonging he'd found in this tiny town. He thought about Mia, whose resilience and kindness inspired everyone around her. And he thought about the diner itself, a symbol of hope and unity in a world that often felt divided. By morning, he'd made up his mind. The next day, Ethan called a town meeting at the local community center. Dozens of people showed up, curious about what he had to say. When Ethan stepped up to speak, he took a deep breath and looked out at the crowd. Among the familiar faces, he spotted Mia sitting near the front, her expression a mix of curiosity and concern. "First," Ethan began, his voice steady but sincere, "I want to thank each and every one of you for welcoming me into your town and into your lives. These past 2 weeks have meant more to me than I can put into words." He paused, letting his words sink in before continuing. "I came here because of a bet, a silly challenge to prove I could survive without relying on my wealth. But what I didn't expect was to find something far more valuable, a sense of purpose. This diner isn't just a business, it's the heart of Maplewood, and I refuse to let it disappear." With that, Ethan revealed his billionaire status, explaining how he planned to step in and purchase the property. However, he quickly added that he wouldn't simply take over. Instead, he proposed turning the diner into a co-op owned by the Hyde employees. They would run it together, ensuring it remained a pillar of the community for generations to come. The room erupted in cheers, applause, and even a few tears. Mia stood up, her eyes shining with gratitude, and hugged Ethan tightly. For the first time in days, there was hope in the air, a belief that miracles could happen when people came together. In that moment, Ethan realized something profound. True wealth wasn't measured in dollars and cents. It was measured in the impact you had on others' lives. And thanks to the generosity and determination of the people around him, he'd finally learned what it meant to truly serve. The town meeting ended with a buzz of excitement that filled the air. Ethan's announcement had sparked a renewed sense of hope, not just for the diner, but for the entire community. People hugged each other, shared stories about their favorite memories at Rosie's, and began brainstorming ideas to make the co-op model work. It was as if a dark cloud had lifted, replaced by sunlight streaming through cracks they didn't even realize were there. For Ethan, though, the real challenge was only beginning. Revealing his billionaire status wasn't easy. It came with its own set of complications. Some people whispered behind his back, wondering if he'd swoop in like some corporate savior and change everything. Others openly questioned whether he truly understood what the diner meant to them. But Ethan didn't let those doubts get to him. He knew actions spoke louder than words, and he was determined to prove that his intentions were genuine. Mia became his closest ally during this time. She worked tirelessly alongside him, helping explain the co-op structure to the staff and locals who weren't familiar with how it would function. Together, they held smaller meetings where everyone could voice their concerns and ideas. At first, some employees were hesitant. They worried about taking on more responsibility or losing the charm that made Rosie's special. But Mia reassured them, reminding them that the diner belonged to them now. They had the power to shape its future while staying true to its roots. Ethan also put his resources to good use. He hired architects and designers to renovate the space, without changing its character. The worn wooden booths stayed, polished but still carrying decades of scratches and stories. The neon Rosie's Diner sign outside got a fresh coat of paint, shining brighter than ever against the night sky. Even the kitchen equipment was upgraded, making life easier for the cooks who spent hours sweating over hot stoves. But Ethan didn't stop there. Inspired by Mia's generosity and passion for helping others, he decided to take things a step further. He announced the creation of a foundation aimed at supporting small businesses in Maplewood and surrounding areas. The idea was simple: provide grants, mentorship programs, and financial guidance to entrepreneurs struggling to keep their dreams alive. For Mia, this was the cherry on top. It aligned perfectly with her dream of giving back to the community she loved so much. As the weeks passed, Ethan grew even closer to the people around him. He attended local events, helped out at fundraisers, and even joined in on the annual chili cook-off, where his dish earned mixed reviews. Slowly but surely, the skepticism faded, replaced by trust and respect. The townsfolk saw that Ethan wasn't just throwing money at problems. He genuinely cared about their well-being. And for Ethan, being part of something bigger than himself felt fulfilling. In a way, he'd found a new family. Meanwhile, Mia continued to inspire everyone around her. Her unwavering optimism kept spirits high, even when challenges arose. One day during the final stages of renovation, a pipe burst in the kitchen, flooding the entire area. Panic set in. This kind of setback could delay the reopening by weeks. But Mia refused to let anyone lose hope. She rolled up her sleeves, grabbed a mop, and started cleaning alongside the crew. Ethan joined in too, laughing as they both ended up soaked from head to toe. By the end of the day, the mess was cleaned up and plans were adjusted to stay on schedule. Through it all, Ethan couldn't help but notice how Mia handled every obstacle with grace and determination. She never complained, never gave up, no matter how tough things got. Watching her reminded him of why he admired her so much, not just because of her strength, but because of her heart. Every decision she made came from a place of love and kindness, whether it was paying for a stranger's meal or cheering on a coworker having a rough day. One evening, after a particularly long shift preparing for the grand reopening, Ethan and Mia sat together at one of the newly refinished booths. The diner was quiet, lit only by the soft glow of string lights hanging above the counter. They talked about everything: the past, the present, and the future. Ethan confessed that before coming to Maplework, he'd felt empty despite his success. Money and power had given him comfort, but not happiness. Mia listened intently, nodding along as he spoke. "You know," she said after a pause, "I used to think I needed more, a better job, a fancier car, a bigger house. But then I realized something. Happiness isn't about what you have. It's about what you give. You've seen that yourself these past few months." Ethan smiled, feeling a warmth spread through his chest. "You're right," he admitted. "And honestly, I don't think I would have figured that out if it weren't for you." Their eyes met, and for a moment neither of them said anything. The connection between them had grown stronger with each passing day, built on mutual respect, shared experiences, and countless cups of coffee served late into the night. Ethan knew then that Mia wasn't just someone he admired. She was someone he wanted to spend the rest of his life with. The grand reopening of Rosie's Diner finally arrived, and the entire town turned out to celebrate. There were balloons, live music, and tables overflowing with food. Regulars hugged old friends, children ran around laughing, and tears of joy flowed freely. Ethan stood near the entrance, watching it all unfold, overwhelmed by a sense of gratitude. This wasn't just a victory for him. It was a victory for everyone who believed in the power of community. As the festivities wound down, Mia pulled Ethan aside. "Thank you," she said softly, her voice thick with emotion. "Not just for saving the diner, but for believing in us. You've changed our lives in ways you'll never fully understand." Ethan shook his head, smiling. "No, Mia. Thank you. You've reminded me what really matters. Without you, none of this would have been possible." In that moment, surrounded by the people who had become his second family, Ethan knew he'd found something far more valuable than wealth or fame. He'd found purpose and a love that would last a lifetime. The grand reopening of Rosie's Diner marked the beginning of a new chapter, not just for the town of Maplewood, but for Ethan as well. The celebration had been everything he imagined and more. Families laughed together at their favorite booths. Kids spun around on bar stools, and the smell of freshly baked pies filled the air. For the first time in years, Ethan felt truly connected to something bigger than himself. He wasn't just a billionaire with an empire. He was part of a community that valued kindness, resilience, and hard work. But as the excitement settled and life returned to its usual rhythm, Ethan found himself reflecting on what came next. For him personally, his 2 weeks in Maplewood were supposed to be temporary, a brief escape from his high-powered world. Yet now that it was over, leaving felt harder than he ever anticipated. Every corner of the diner reminded him of Mia, the way she moved between tables with ease, her laughter ringing out during busy shifts, the quiet moments they shared when no one else was around. She had become his anchor, grounding him in ways he never thought possible. Mia, too, was grappling with her own emotions. Over the past few weeks, she'd grown closer to Ethan than she'd expected. At first, she'd seen him as the city guy who stumbled into their small-town world, a fish out of water trying to prove himself. But as she watched him roll up his sleeves, listen intently to people's concerns, and pour his heart into saving the diner, her perspective shifted. Beneath the polished exterior was someone genuine, someone willing to learn and grow, and somewhere along the way, she realized she didn't want him to leave. One crisp autumn morning, Ethan walked into the diner carrying 2 steaming cups of coffee. He spotted Mia near the counter, organizing menus before the breakfast rush. She looked up and smiled when she saw him approaching. "Thought you could use this," he said, handing her one of the cups. "It's your favorite, extra cream, no sugar." She took the cup gratefully, savoring the warmth against the cool breeze drifting through the open window. "Thanks," she replied, taking a sip. "Perfect timing. I was starting to feel like I needed a boost." They stood there for a moment, enjoying the quiet before the chaos of the day began. Finally, Ethan broke the silence. "So, have you thought about what happens after all this?" he asked, gesturing vaguely to the diner. Mia raised an eyebrow. "What do you mean?" Ethan hesitated, unsure of how to put his thoughts into words. "I mean, for me. My life back in New York feels so far away now. Like another version of myself is living it, not me. Coming here, meeting you, it's changed everything." Mia studied him carefully, sensing the weight behind his words. "Are you saying you don't want to go back?" "I don't know," Ethan admitted. "Part of me feels like I should. I've got responsibilities, businesses to run. But another part of me can't imagine walking away from this place. Or from you." Her cheeks flushed slightly at his admission, but she kept her tone light. "That's quite a dilemma. What does your gut tell you?" Ethan chuckled softly. "My gut hasn't been this confused since my very first shift here. But if I'm being honest," he paused, looking directly into her eyes, "I think I already know the answer." Before Mia could respond, the bell above the door jingled, signaling the arrival of their first customers. They both turned to greet them, slipping effortlessly back into their roles as hosts. But the conversation lingered in the air, unspoken yet undeniable. Later that evening, after closing time, Ethan and Mia sat together at one of the booths. The diner was dimly lit, with only a single overhead lamp casting a warm glow. Outside, snowflakes began to fall gently, dusting the streets with a layer of white. It was peaceful, almost magical. I've made my decision, Ethan said quietly, breaking the comfortable silence between them. I'm scaling back on my corporate ventures. I'll keep enough to stay financially stable, but most of my focus will shift to projects like this, the foundation, supporting small businesses, giving back to communities like yours. Mia tilted her head, intrigued. That sounds amazing, but are you sure? You've built so much over the years, isn't it hard to let go? It is, Ethan admitted, but I've realized something important. Success isn't about how much you accumulate, it's about how much you contribute. Being here has taught me that. Plus, he smiled shyly. I've got a pretty good teacher showing me the ropes, Mia laughed, shaking her head. Well, if you're sticking around, I guess I'll have to keep teaching you. Maybe someday you'll even master making pancakes without burning them. Ethan grinned, pretending to look offended. Hey, progress. Takes time, give me credit, I haven't spilled coffee on anyone in weeks. Their laughter echoed through the empty diner, filling the space with warmth. For a while, neither of them spoke, content to simply sit together and enjoy the moment. Then Ethan reached across the table, taking Mia's hand in his. There's something else I need to say, he began, his voice steady but tinged with nervousness. These past few months have been incredible. More than anything, though, getting to know you has been the highlight. You've shown me what it means to live with purpose, to care deeply about others. And I don't want to lose that. I don't want to lose you. Mia's breath caught in her throat. She hadn't expected this, not tonight. But hearing those words sent a wave of happiness rushing through her. You won't, she whispered. I'm not going anywhere. Ethan smiled, relief washing over him. Good, because I was wondering. He paused, pulling a small box from his pocket. Inside was a simple silver ring, its design elegant yet understated. Would you consider spending the rest of your life with me? Not because I'm some billionaire looking for a fairy tale ending, but because you're the person who makes me want to be better every single day. Tears welled up in Mia's eyes as she stared at the ring, then at Ethan. She didn't need to think twice. Yes, she said, her voice trembling with emotion. 1,000 times yes. As Ethan slid the ring onto her finger, the snow continued to fall outside, blanketing the town in a serene stillness. Inside, the diner glowed with love and hope, a testament to the power of connection and second chances. Together they had transformed not just a building, but each other's lives, and the journey was only just beginning. In the weeks that followed, Ethan officially relocated to Maplewood, trading his penthouse apartment for a cozy home near the edge of town. He threw himself into his new mission, working alongside Mia to expand the foundation and support local initiatives. Meanwhile, Mia graduated top of her class and began pursuing her dream of becoming a social worker, using her skills to uplift families in crisis. Their partnership extended beyond personal goals. They became a team dedicated to making a difference. Whether it was hosting fundraisers at the diner, mentoring young entrepreneurs, or simply lending a listening ear to someone in need, they approached every challenge with unity and determination. And so, what started as a bet turned into a story of redemption, growth, and love. Ethan Caldwell may have entered Maplewood as a billionaire seeking humility, but he left as something far greater, a man who understood the true meaning of wealth, and who found his greatest treasure in the heart of a small-town waitress named Mia. Months had passed since Ethan made Maplewood his permanent home. The town, once a temporary stop on his journey of self-discovery, had become the center of his life. Every morning, he woke up to the sound of birds chirping outside his cozy house, the scent of pine trees lingering in the crisp air. It was a far cry from the bustling streets of New York City, but it felt right, like coming home after years of wandering. Ethan's days were now filled with purpose. He divided his time between managing the foundation he'd created and helping Mia run Rosie's diner. Together, they turned the diner into more than just a place to grab a meal. It became a hub for the community. Local artists hung their paintings. On the walls, musicians performed acoustic sets during weekend nights, and aspiring entrepreneurs held meetings over cups of coffee. Ethan loved watching people gather, share stories, and support one another. It reminded him of why he'd fallen in love with this town in the first place. Mia, too, thrived in her new role as both a social worker and co-owner of the diner. Her dream of opening a community center finally came true when Ethan helped secure funding for the project. Located just down the street from the diner, the center offered free counseling services, after-school programs for kids, and workshops for adults looking to develop new skills. On its opening day, the entire town showed up to celebrate. As Mia stood at the podium thanking everyone for their support, Ethan watched proudly from the crowd. She had always been the heart of Maplewood, and now she was its guiding light. Despite the busyness of their lives, Ethan and Mia never lost sight of what mattered most: their relationship. They carved out time every evening to sit together on the porch, sipping tea and talking about their day. Sometimes they'd take long walks through the woods, hand in hand, marveling at how much their lives had changed. Neither of them could have predicted that a silly bet would lead them here, to a partnership built on trust, respect, and an unshakable bond. One chilly December evening, Ethan surprised Mia with a special date night. He closed the diner early, lit candles along the counter, and prepared a simple dinner just for the two of them. The glow of the candlelight softened the room, making it feel intimate and magical. "This feels fancy," Mia teased as she took her seat. "What's the occasion?" Ethan smiled, pulling out a chair for her. "No occasion. Just wanted to remind you how grateful I am. For everything." Mia tilted her head, curious. "Grateful? For what?" "For believing in me when I didn't believe in myself," Ethan replied, his voice sincere. "For showing me that success isn't about money or titles. It's about connection, about giving back. You've taught me so much, Mia, more than you'll ever know." Her eyes softened, touched by his words. "You've done the same for me," she said quietly. "Before you came into my life, I thought I was alone and wanting to make a difference. But you proved that we're stronger together. That change is possible if we work as a team." They spent the rest of the evening reminiscing about their journey, the challenges they'd overcome, the lessons they'd learned, and the joy they'd found in each other. By the time dessert arrived, a slice of homemade apple pie, the snow outside had begun to fall heavier, blanketing the town in white. The following spring brought even more growth to Maplewood, and to Ethan and Mia's lives. Their wedding took place on a sunny afternoon, held in the backyard of the diner where it all began. Friends, family, and townsfolk gathered under a canopy of twinkling lights, surrounded by flowers and laughter. Mia wore a simple yet elegant dress, while Ethan looked dapper in a navy suit. As they exchanged vows, promising to stand by each other through thick and thin, there wasn't a dry eye in the crowd. Afterward, the celebration spilled into the diner itself. Tables groaned under the weight of potluck dishes brought by guests, and music played softly in the background. Ethan and Mia danced slowly in the middle of the room, oblivious to the world around them. For a moment, time seemed to stand still, leaving only the two of them in their own little bubble of happiness. As the night wore on, Ethan pulled Mia aside for a quiet moment. "Do you remember that first day?" he asked, smiling. "Of course," Mia replied, laughing. "You spilled orange juice all over Mr. Peterson and called Mrs. Dawson sir. Classic rookie mistakes." "I wasn't exactly graceful," Ethan admitted, chuckling. "But look at us now. Who would have thought we'd end up like this?" Mia leaned her head against his shoulder, content. "Life has a funny way of surprising us, doesn't it?" "It sure does," Ethan agreed. "And I wouldn't trade these surprises for anything." Years later, Ethan and Mia remained pillars of the Maplewood community. The diner continued to thrive, welcoming travelers and locals alike. The foundation expanded its reach, supporting small businesses across multiple towns, and the community center became a beacon of hope, offering resources and opportunities to those in need. Through it all, Ethan and Mia stayed grounded, remembering the values that had brought them together: humility, kindness, and a commitment to serving others. They often joked that fate had played a hand in bringing them together, that ridiculous bet, that tiny diner, that chance encounter. But deep down, they knew it wasn't luck. It was the power of human connection, of choosing to see beyond appearances and embrace the beauty of shared experiences. As they sat together on their porch one summer evening, watching fireflies dance in the twilight, Ethan turned to Mia with a smile. "You know," he said, "I used to think wealth was measured in dollars. Now I realize it's measured in moments like this, with the people you love, doing work that matters." Mia nodded, squeezing his hand. "And we've got plenty of both." With that, they sat in comfortable silence, soaking in the peace of the moment. Their journey, from strangers to partners, from uncertainty to fulfillment, had been unpredictable, messy, and beautiful. And though neither of them could have foreseen where life would take them, one thing was certain: they wouldn't trade it for the world.